Said the little boy, "Sometimes I drop my spoon." Said the old man, "I do that too." The little boy whispered, "I wet my pants." "I do that too," laughed the little old man. Said the little boy, "I often cry." The old man nodded. "So do I." "But worst of all," said the boy, "it seems grown-ups don't pay attention to me." And he felt the warmth of a wrinkled old hand. "I know what you mean," said the little old man. That poem by Shel Silverstein, called The Little Boy and the Old Man, has always gotten me right here. It's designed to do that, of course. But though parts of it are so sad, ultimately what is so sweet is the kinship and relationship between the very young and the very old. This is a time when those of you who maybe have been listening to my little story about Captain Tom Moore know that this centenarian, as of just yesterday, at the time of this recording, Captain Tom turned 100 yesterday, and his fundraising goal to walk around his garden and raise money for the National Health Service as they battle COVID-19 has topped 31 million pounds. Nobody is not paying attention to Captain Tom Moore, 100 years old or not, and to 120, Captain Tom. This week's Parshat, double portion, Acharei-Mot and Kedoshim, have so much in them we could be here all day. But let's look at just one tiny piece. In the center of the Holiness Code, as Kedoshim is known, we find Leviticus 19, verse 32. "You shall rise before the aged and show deference to the old. You shall be in awe of your God. I am the Eternal." This is in the very center of our Torah, just a little bit to the left. This is a clear and unequivocal directive. It comes just a few paragraphs after the very famous, to say the least, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself. That's Leviticus 19, verse 18. And this directive about how we are to be with the aged comes amid this extraordinary list of ways to create a just and peaceful society. We call it the Holiness Code, and each piece of it is worth our attention. But notwithstanding the famous Hillel teaching that the essence of the Torah is what would be hateful to you, do not do to your fellow man, this commandment, treating the aged with deference, embodies even more, I believe, humility, and insists that we stand in the presence of wisdom and experience, taking our rightful place in the chain of living and learning. If there was ever a time to be humble before the elderly, to give grace and honor to those who have lived long years, it is right now. We were told from the outset a few months ago that our beloved elders would be more susceptible to the ravages of COVID-19 due to compromised respiratory systems, close quarters in group facilities, and critical shortages of providers and equipment that could endanger their care. These are unthinkable, excruciating times, and in such days we need our tradition more than ever to be a guiding light. Now, the phrase "show deference" can be read literally as beautify the face. And what wisdom the Torah gives us when it admonishes us to do just that. How can we ever hope to love our neighbor as ourselves if we don't see ourselves somehow reflected in them? And how can we ever hope to honor the elderly if we do not acknowledge that if we are very fortunate, we will one day be one of them? Too often the aged are regarded as a nuisance, a burden, even an embarrassment. This is not a new phenomenon, though. In 2004, in the J Weekly, Rabbi Pinchas Lipner addressed with honesty and sensitivity the great leap forward that our verse in Leviticus signified. He wrote, April 30th, 2004, by the way. The Torah demanded that a person not be evaluated by the might of his flesh, but by the might of his spirit. The Israelites were, in fact, ruled by zikanim, elders, because of the characteristic feature of age, discernment leading to justice, not by the characteristic feature of the young, impulse. Far from being thought of as useless to the community, the aged were accorded the highest dignity, for youth passes and passes quickly. Now, when I pulled up this article from the J, it didn't have a byline at the top. It said just J correspondent and the date. I had to read through the entire article before I was made aware who the author was. Rabbi Pinchas Lipner, as it turned out, to my delight, as the author of this article, struck me again right here. Because Rabbi Lipner is the retired dean of the Hebrew Academy of San Francisco, where I was a student for 9 years and where I met Mrs. Hyman. Rabbi Lipner and his wife Isabel, my kindergarten teacher, were my first formal Jewish role models. At the academy, we learned to stand in the presence of the rabbis and show kavod to age and experience. And I am very grateful for that foundation. Now, of course, respect for the elderly in an ideal version is not utterly unique to Judaism by any means. There is, however, a Western cultural stigma around aging, and psychologist Erik Erikson argued that the Western fear of aging keeps us from living full lives. He wrote, "Lacking a culturally viable ideal of old age, our civilization does not really harbor a concept of the whole life." And Koshin Paley Ellison, a Buddhist monk and co-founder of the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care, told the Huffington Post a couple of years ago, "There's so much shame in our culture around aging and death. People themselves, when they're aging, feel that there's something wrong with them and they're losing value." We can look to Jewish teachings and we can look to other cultures for models of how to treat the elderly with respect and deference. In Greece, on the island of Rhodes, abbots are addressed by everyone as Geronda, which means old man, and abbesses are called Gerondissa. Not exactly terms of endearment in the United States, Gerondissa, of course, meaning old woman, but in Greece, this notion identifies older people with wisdom and immediately affords them respect. Of course, the Native American community and world gives utmost deference to the aged, as does the country of Korea, beautiful Korean culture, which has most of its tradition rooted in Confucian principles, has beautiful celebrations for those who are aging, particularly at the age of 60, and my favorite, for someone who turns the age of 70, they are then known as kokui, old and rare. In the African American community, death is often seen as an opportunity to celebrate life. No one who has witnessed a jazz funeral in the streets of New Orleans or in the Deep South and the Bayou will tell you that the passing of a dear one is anything but an opportunity to celebrate the life that was lived and to shepherd and escort the loved one into their next life. We have, of course, similar traditions in Judaism, and we are thinking so much right now of those who are unable to say farewell to their loved ones in the way that our tradition dictates. We are adapting, we are adjusting, and we are praying that soon anyone who needs that comforting escort and embrace will be able to receive it in good health and time. I was particularly taken by the phrase, "You shall fear or be in awe of God." In Parshat Kedoshim, it repeats, "I am the eternal your God," many times, but awe and fear of the Creator is mentioned only with regard to this mitzvah regarding the elderly, and in a preceding, even more famous verse prohibiting insulting the deaf or placing a stumbling block before the blind. When we indulge in arrogance and hubris, thinking, "It can't happen to me," the Torah pulls us up short. We can be brought low by disability or illness, and likely will be subject to old age in the best of circumstances. When that truth strikes home, wonder, awe, and yes, even fear of the Creator are appropriate and necessary. When our society rises to the occasion of honoring our elders, prioritizing their care and comfort, and literally walking in their footsteps, perhaps our Torah tells us we are on the path to partnership with the divine, to create Kedusha, holiness on earth. Until then, we'll bid one more wish to Captain Tom on his 100th birthday, whose words of warmth, optimism, and wisdom in this dark hour light our path, as he reminds us, for all those people finding it difficult at the moment, the sun will shine on you again, and the clouds will go away. Let us show deference, proper respect to the elderly. Let us beautify their countenances and walk in the light of their ways. Shabbat Shalom.